sure what I'm doing in the background, but I know that it will be relaxing and full of tingles. So if that's what you're looking for, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and get me to my goal of 1,000 subscribers by the end of 2024. That would be totally awesome. Thank you. United Kingdom. The Burke and Hare murders, committed in Edinburgh, Scotland in 1828, stand as one of the most infamous cases of serial killings in British history. William Burke, B-U-R-K-E, and William Hare, H-A-R-E, were two Irish immigrants who, over the course of several months, murdered at least 16 people, selling their victims' bodies to a local anatomy school for dissection. Their crimes highlight the dark side of Edinburgh's role as a leading center for medical education during the early 19th century, where the demand for cadavers exceeded legal supply. In the 1820s, Edinburgh was a leading center for medical science, known specially for its advancements in anatomy and surgery. The city's medical school attracted students from all over the world due to its innovative teaching methods and prominent faculty. One of the most significant figures of the times was Dr. Robert Knox, K-N-O-X, an anatomist who used fresh cadavers to teach students about human dissection. This period also witnessed the rise of surgical practices like amputation, with surgeons such as James Syme, S-Y-M-E, developing new techniques for limb removal, significantly reducing patient mortality rates. One notable example of how new medical techniques saved lives in the 1830s is the improvement in amputation procedures. Before this period, amputations were highly dangerous, as the risk of infection and blood loss often led to death. However, surgeons like Dr. Syme, who was based in Edinburgh, developed new techniques that significantly reduced these risks. I might say I'm going off on a tangent here, but when reading about older cases, I think it's really important to learn some facts about the history to give you an understanding of how the crimes came to be, what caused them. Syme's method of amputation involved cutting through the soft tissue and ligating the blood vessels before removing the bone. Now, I can't even imagine what we were doing before that. Did they just cut off the vessels and hoped for the best? This approach, combined with advancements in cleanliness and wound management, greatly increased the survival rate of patients undergoing amputations. Now you can imagine, it must have gave people some sort of craze, learning these new methods and realizing that they don't have to die anymore because they have an infection. And that must have gave the doctors the urge to find cadavers in any way possible. That they didn't do it themselves, but they gave good money for it. So it drove some people mad, as it did with Burke and what was the other one? Hare. Yeah. Before these improvements, the mortality rate for amputations was over 50%. But with better techniques and care, survival rates steadily improved. This particularly was important for soldiers and laborers who suffered injuries that required amputations, as the refined procedures gave them a much better chance of survival. However, Edinburgh's medical progress wasn't without controversy. The demand for cadavers to teach anatomy led to the infamous Burke and Hare murders, where Burke and William Hare resorted to killing people to sell their bodies to Dr. Knox. This scandal, which eventually led to the passing of the Anatomy Act of 1832, highlighted the darker side of medical advancements. Despite this, Edinburgh remained a hub for medical innovation, laying the groundwork for modern surgical techniques and medical education. Now, let's get into the background of William Burke and Hare. William Burke was born in 1792 in Erney County, Tyrone, Ireland. U-R-N-E-Y County. One of the two sons to a middle-class parents. Burke, along with his brother Constantine, had a comfortable upbringing, and both joined the British Army as teenagers. Burke served in the Donegal militia. That's probably not at all how you pronounce it. Donegal militia, until he met and married a woman from County Mayo, Mayo, where they later he was seldom seen without a Bible. William Hare, on the other hand, we don't have much about him. He was probably born in County Armagh, Armagh, or in Newry. His age and year of birth are unknown. When arrested in 1828, he gave his age as 21, but one source states that he was born between 1792 or 1804. Information on his earlier life is scant, although it is possible that he worked in Ireland as an agricultural laborer before traveling to Britain. He worked on the Union Canal for 7 years before moving to Edinburgh in the mid-1820s, where he worked as a coalman's assistant. He lodged at Tanner's Close in the house of a man named Logue and his wife Margaret in the nearby Westport area of the town. When Logue died in 1826, Hare may have married Margaret. Based on contemporary accounts, Brian Bailey, in his history of the murders, describes Hare as illiterate, a lean, quarrelsome, violent, and immoral character, with the scars from old wounds about his head and brow. Bailey describes Margaret, who was also an Irish immigrant, as a hard-featured and undebauched virago. What are these words? Let's just search. Debauched virago. Copy here. Paste there. It describes a woman who is not only overbearing or aggressive, but also morally corrupt or excessively indulgent in vice. It paints a picture of a powerful yet unscrupulous figure. Interesting. So that's William Hare's wife, Margaret, possible wife. In 1827, Burke and MacDougall, his wife, went to Midlothian, dear Lord, Midlothian, to work on the harvest, where they met Hare. The men became friends when Burke and MacDougall answers for dissection, and legal channels, which was mainly the bodies of executed criminals, could not meet the demand. This shortage created a black market for human bodies, and unscrupulous individuals like Burke and Hare took advantage of this gap. After successfully selling Donald's body for a tidy sum, Burke and Hare realized there was a lucrative business in body snatching, or, well, in their case, body supplying. Rather than wait for lodgers to die naturally, the men decided to accelerate the process. Between November 1827 and October 1828, so not even a year, Burke and Hare murdered at least 16 people, although some historians believe the true number may be even higher. Scottish law required that corpses used for medical research should only come from those who died in prison, suicide victims, or from foundlings and orphans. Dear Lord, the shortage of corpses led to an increase in body snatching by what were known as resurrection men. Disgusting. Measures to ensure graves were left undisturbed, such as the use of mort safers or mort safes. Let's search that. What's a mort safe? What's a mort safe? Tell me. A mort safe was a heavy protective structure placed over graves in the 18th and 19th centuries, particularly in Scotland, to prevent body snatching. Mort safes were typically made of iron and consisted of metal cages or grids placed over the coffin. They were temporary measures, usually left in place until the body had decayed enough to no longer be useful to grave robbers or resurrectionists. That is so morbid. Let's get back to the case. I don't even remember where I was. Oh, the measures. Oh, when a lodger in Hare's house died, he turned to his friend Burke for advice. They decided to sell the body to Knox. They received what was for them the generous sum of £7.10. What? 7 tens? I don't know. A little over 2 months later, so it was Daniel. A little over 2 months later, when Hare was concerned that a lodger with a fever would deter others from staying in the house, he and Burke murdered her and sold the body to Knox. The men continued their murder spree people they encountered on the streets. Many were elderly, sick, or marginalized, making them less likely to be missed. The duo's method of killing became known as burking, suffocating the victim by covering their mouths and nose, leaving no visible marks of violence on the body. So you're telling me these two invented a new method of killing? That's what people call burking, suffocating the victim by covering their mouth and nose. Interesting that still they couldn't tell that the person died by suffocation and not of natural cause. That tells you how far back this happened. And that's why they needed those bodies to study on, to figure out the basic stuff. This method was chosen to ensure the bodies were in prime condition for dissection and would raise no suspicions when handed over to anatomists. Among their most well-known victims were Mary Patterson, a young prostitute, and James Wilson, a mentally disabled man known affectionately as Daft Jamie. Well, that doesn't sound very affectionate to me. The murders of such recognizable figures in the community caused a stir in Edinburgh when their bodies were later identified on the dissection table. How horrifying. Burke and Hare's criminal enterprise began to unravel when their final victim, Margaret, was discovered by suspicious lodgers in Hare's boarding house. The lodgers noticed her body hidden in a pile of straw and reported it to the police. Not to be emotionless, but this story sounds amazing for a show. Let me know if they've made a movie or something about this case, cause I doubt that they haven't. So Burke and Hare were immediately arrested after this body was found in their house, but both initially denied involvement. However, when the authorities threatened Hare with prosecution, he quickly turned in evidence, offering full testimony against Burke in exchange for immunity. Burke and his wife, Helen, were charged with multiple counts of murder. During the trial, Hare's testimony was crucial in securing Burke's conviction. On December 25, 1828, Burke was found guilty of murder and sentenced to death by hanging. His execution took place on January 28, 1829, in front of a crowd of thousands. In a grim twist of irony, Burke's body was publicly dissected at the University of Edinburgh and his skeleton was preserved and displayed as a cautionary symbol of his crimes. Now that's awesome. His skin was even reportedly used to create various items, including a notebook cover, which can still be seen in Surgeons' Hall Museum of Edinburgh. Oh man, how the mighty have fallen. Hare, having been granted, and I didn't mean the murderer, I meant the justice system in UK. Now this sounds amazing. We should turn every murderer's skin into notebook covers. Hare, having been granted immunity, disappeared after the trial. This is also nuts, because they had, maybe he was the one murdering them and Hare helped, but I doubt that he had I don't know. He got immunity, so he disappeared after the trial. Public outrage and mob violence forced him to flee Edinburgh, and his whereabouts after that remain a mystery. Who knows, maybe he was killed. Some reports suggest he was blinded by an angry mob and lived out his life in poverty, though no confirmed records of his later years exist. Helen MacDougall, Burke's wife, was acquitted due to the lack of evidence, but was similarly hounded by public anger and eventually disappeared from public view. The Burke and Hare murders shocked 19th century Britain and had a lasting impact on both public opinion and medical practices. In response to these crimes, the Anatomy Act of 1832 was passed, which allowed medical schools greater access to bodies by legal means, significantly reducing the need for body snatching. The case has since become the subject of numerous books, films, and plays, cementing Burke and Hare's place in the annals of criminal history. Their story remains a chilling